My sister and I are both really big fans of Belle from Beauty and the Beast. As a gift for my sister, I made this Disney copyright Belle dress. It's a Cricut design. I bought it without Cricut access and it costs $4.99. If you have Cricut access, it should be a little bit less than that. I'm going to walk you through making it. My name is Ruth. This is Hank's Maker Mentor. Before we click Make It, let's look at the details. These pictures show close-ups of the project and what it looks like on your cutting mat. You can share it, you can save it. It's called the Disney Belle dress. It does have the registered symbol here. It's an intermediate level project, and you'll see why as we go through, and it should take less than 30 minutes. The finished size of the dress is about 6 by 6 inches, and the project scores and cuts cardstock to create a 3D dress inspired by Disney's Belle. It lists the materials to cut and the other supplies you'll need, how to prepare, cut, and assemble. The More Help section talks about the scoring wheel. You can also look at related projects, including 3D projects, Disney, paper, and more. I'm going to print this to be able to refer to the instructions as I go without needing to look at my computer every time. Let's move to my craft table so I can show you what I'll be using. Blue light grip mats, or a well-loved and not super sticky standard grip mat. These are the Nicapa brand mats. They're much cheaper than Cricut brand mats, but I love how they work and I keep ordering new ones. You're going to need a scoring tool. You can use the scoring stylus on any of the Explore machines or the Maker machines. If you have a Maker or Maker 3, you can use the single scoring wheel with the quick swap housing. You'll need a fine point blade, dark yellow cardstock, and yellow cardstock. This project is designed to be cut with 8.5-inch paper. You don't need 12 by 12 paper to get the finished dress size 6 by 6, but because I have 12 by 12 paper, I'm going to make use of that extra size and make my finished project a little bit larger. A couple other things that I'm going to use that are not on Cricut's list. My brayer to help make sure my paper is stuck down securely to my mat. It's helpful to have a scraper to remove all those extra tiny bits off your mat without having to pick them up with your fingers or tweezers. This is Cricut's standard scraper, the extra large scraper. This is the little red scraper from 143 Vinyl. You just use them to scrape off the material that's stuck to your mat. You also need glue. I ended up using the Tombow Aqua Mono glue, and I ended up pulling out my angled spatula, but I didn't grab it before I started. Here are the printed instructions. My printer used 3 pages, but the last one is blank, so it's going back in my printer. It might be a little bit different if you print it. Back in Design Space, you can alter the project by selecting Customize or click Make It. Select the design. Come up here and make sure the padlock is closed so my proportions stay the same. Then I'll change the width to 11.5 because of the margin Cricut needs on the material. We're going to click Make It and rearrange by dragging them to save some paper. Then click Continue. I recommend that you do a test cut before committing to the cut settings. I forgot and didn't want to go back to set one up, so I used the dark yellow as my test cut and cut it first because I have plenty of that paper. We're going to try the medium cardstock setting with less pressure. I'm going to get my papers on the mat and load my scoring wheel in clamp B. If you're using the scoring stylus, that will go in clamp A. Load the mat. Press the flash and go button. It paused to have me change to the fine point blade, then I press go again. We're going to check to see if the cut settings are correct. I'm using my stab and grab tweezers and it came up really nicely. So I'll unload the mat and set it aside while I get the other one loaded and swap back to the quick swap housing with the single scoring wheel. If you're using the scoring stylus, you won't have needed to swap and it won't pause in between. Since the scoring stylus goes in clamp A and your fine point blade is in clamp B, you just press go one time and it will do the scoring and the cutting. While that scores, I'm going to remove the other ones from this mat. I'm doing that by flipping it over and then pulling the mat away from the material to prevent my paper curling. After this second mat finishes, we're going to do the same thing. I started to remove the material, but it was catching in a few places. So this is when I used the angled spatula. It allows me to get in and work around the details to remove the excess paper and then flip it back over to remove the pieces of the design without curling them. Now we have 4 pieces cut out of yellow, 3 pieces out of our dark yellow, and we'll get started assembling it. First, fold along the score lines of this skirt. I started by folding all of them in, going the same direction. I had to keep referencing the picture to make sure I was getting it correct, and being able to lay it next to the pieces while I worked was more helpful than I expected. The small sections of the skirt fold into each other to make this shape. I'll make the rest of the folds. And this is what it looks like so far. Next, glue the wraparound top piece onto the skirt piece at the waist, using the score lines and tabs to align each piece properly. And I spent a while figuring out how to line this up. My suggestion is to fold the top of the skirt as narrow as you can and then press it down firmly to hold all the creases in place while you apply a small amount of glue to each of the skirt tabs, and then place the bodice on top, giving it a moment to dry. The bodice just barely covers the folds on the front of the skirt, so you need to line it up really carefully before you glue it. This is what I have the back looking like right now. We're going to do a layer of glue across and line up the edges so the wraparound piece doesn't stick out at an odd angle. Then another layer of glue and do the same with the other wraparound piece. Give it some time to dry. Now for the shoulder pieces and other accent pieces. Take both of the skirt swag pieces, make sure you have them lined up correctly, and glue the dark yellow piece with the cutouts on top of the solid yellow piece. For the shoulder swags, the yellow goes on top of the dark yellow. Then add the tiny center detail piece. Glue the entire shoulder piece to the top of the bodice. For the skirt swag, I tried to center the swag with the skirt. Here's what I suggest based off of doing it a much harder way, as you'll see here in the video. Mark the correct position on the skirt with a tiny dab of glue where the top of the swag goes. Then place glue on the swag itself on these 3 points, spreading slightly to each side. Place the swag on the dress, being careful not to compress it too much. You don't want to lose the 3D effect. Let it dry for a minute and then place glue on both edges of the swag and line them up with the edge of the skirt. Here's the finished dress. The design is gorgeous. The details said less than 30 minutes. I think with clearer instructions, they're correct. Let me show you what I ended up doing with it. Maximizing the use of 12 by 12 paper, the finished design is a little over 7 inches wide and 7 inches tall, but you've still got room around the sides that are going to be very visible. I cut a sheet of rose paper to fit my shadow box, then glued the dress to the rose paper. Put it in the shadow box, and here's my finished project. Please consider subscribing and clicking the bell icon so you're notified when I release new Cricut videos with tutorials, design space updates, and other tricks every week with occasional bonus videos. Thanks for watching Hank's Maker Mentor. Until next time, bye.